To begin each topic, the candidates will have 1 minute each to answer a question on the subject. That question, in this case, is what is your plan to ensure Calgarians feel safer, both in the downtown core and in communities across the city? Jeff Davison, you are up first. You have 1 minute.
Well, I would start by saying what we're doing isn't working. We've been on the campaign trail for over a year, and not one single Calgarian has told me they feel safer today than they did 4 years ago. The system's broken. Again, seniors don't feel safe downtown. Our young people do not feel safe on transit. Frankly, our transit drivers are being attacked on their job. This is not Calgary. This is not safe. So to my best recollection, the biggest challenge we have is that people work in silos here. And nobody's working together on finalizing a solution and figuring out how we put Calgarians first. So the idea would be bringing a task force forward. The idea of getting our federal government on board with us on bail reform so that the day we arrest criminals, they're not back out on the street the next day. Working with the province on mental health and addiction strategy, because let's face it, 90% of the problem downtown right now, and now we're seeing it in our own communities, is mental health and addiction. And then working locally with policing agencies as well as all of those community services for that wraparound care to make sure that when we pick up people, we don't make sure they're getting back into a system where they get trapped.
Thank you very much. Jyoti Gondek, you are next on this topic. Your time starts now.
The thing that I hear most commonly from Calgarians is their concern about open drug use downtown. And they are fearful to be in public spaces. They're worried about people being in positions of crisis. So I made a promise through my campaign that I would end open drug use, and I actually had the opportunity to bring that motion forward to council before we finished our term. And as a result of my leadership, we are strengthening our bylaw to prevent open drug use, and we are going to send those folks who need help to community court so they can get the supports they need for housing, addictions, and mental health support. That's a compassionate way to address a very real issue. We are also making sure that we are investing in integrated response from Calgary Police Service, as well as transit and peace officers and outreach teams. And the other component of public safety is making sure you've got a fire department that is fully funded to respond to emergency calls when they happen. That's a commitment I've made, and I will continue to invest in.
Sonia Sharp, over to you. What is your plan to ensure Calgarians feel safer, both in the downtown core and in communities across the city?
Thank you. I want you all to imagine this. A young lady interviewed me a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about public safety, and she started crying in my office when I mentioned bringing a pledge forward for increased police officers and a police station downtown. She works at a bar on Stephen Avenue, and she said to me, "Councillor Sharp, I fear my life walking home to my car every night." And so imagine that's your daughter or your son working downtown and not having the support they need. So we have pledged for 500 new police officers just to get up to the national average, a police station downtown, piloting turnstiles on some of our more, I would say, fare evasion platforms in Calgary, and making sure that our city remains safe. And without a safe city, you will have nothing. All these great ideas we talk about bringing people here and vibrancy, people will look at Calgary and say, if the city is not safe, I'm not moving my business there, I'm not moving my family there, and people will leave the city. So I am a big proponent of making sure this is the safest city in Canada.
Thanks very much. Jeremy Farkas.
Thank you. And as we approach 2 million people, we have a choice to make to finally deal with the root causes and build a city that's safer, more connected, and economically successful, or continue with the Band-Aid solutions, reacting too late, paying more, and leaving too many people behind. My public safety plan calls for pairing the two approaches that we know work, compassion and enforcement. Right now, we've seen a city council stuck, focused on either throwing just police at the problem or just social workers at the problem. We need to parry the both. So my plan calls for cracking down on the 50 to 100 individuals that we know are responsible for the vast majority of repeat violent offenses. It calls for reopening the downtown police station. It calls for more presence on transit, but it doesn't stop there. It calls for support for addictions treatment, for recovery, for housing first, for mental health, as well as cracking down on gangs, diverting youth from those unfortunate situations so that we can prevent crisis from beginning in the first place. It's not compassion versus enforcement. It has to be both for us to be able to move forward as a city.
Thanks very much. And last up on this topic, Brian Thiessen, you have a minute.
Thank you so much. So we started by talking to mental health and addiction experts around the city, and we asked them for their input on what they would focus on their top priorities. And they said, focus on 3 things. Housing First strategy, 24/7 mental health and addiction supports housed with CPS and transit police. So that is our policy. We are proposing a Housing First strategy. It is literally housing the homeless. It is both the compassionate thing to do, and it's been done before in Finland. And we realized from the Finnish study where they track their costs that it both helps with the success of treating for mental health and addiction issues when someone is housed, but it also saves about $100,000 per person per year by housing them first. We're talking about funding the 24/7 mental health and addiction support teams with Alpha House on transit throughout the city to keep people safe wherever they are. So I brought it to the police service. They told me they worked on it for 4 years. It's called Reach Up, and they can implement on day one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will now move into an open debate format on the topic of public safety. This segment will go for 10 minutes and will give us a chance to dig a little deeper into where the candidates stand on this issue. Candidates will not be timed on their answers in this segment, but we are asking them to answer the questions directly and concisely and to avoid interrupting each other. Now, the 10-minute clock starts now, and we begin with the question for Sonia Sharp. In your platform and here on stage, you talked about hiring 500 new police officers. Can you explain how you'll pull that off?
Well, when it comes to hiring, that would be the police chief and the commission looking at what they're looking for when they're hiring police officers. There's a business case that would have to come to council, but council has the money. And so if you're looking at 500 police officers, you're looking at about $75 million. $75 million is not hard to find in the corporation. I found 170 in 4 years. And so there's means of ways to funding what we need. And to be honest, there's not a price on safety right now when it comes to making sure we're getting back up to the national average. And so there are things that need to be kind of cut at the city and redirected into things like public safety.
I'd like to jump in. Can I? Yeah, absolutely. So I'd like to say, first of all, it's not 75 million. It's about 100 to 150 million. And it will take you about 10 years to roll it out. They can't recruit 500 officers and train them in 10 years. Secondly, and most importantly, the police aren't asking for 500 more officers. The chief of police and 3 successive chief of police have said to us, you cannot police your way out of this issue. So they're not asking for it, and it's going to cost you about a 5.4% tax increase to your property taxes per year. Lastly, I will say this. You do not make policing decisions on cop per prop ratios. That is an antiquated way to decide, and what that means in plain English is take the population and figure out how many police you need. A lot of the cities like Toronto we're comparing ourselves against have their transit police embedded in their services. So we could transfer transit police to the CPS service tomorrow, and we'd immediately be one of the best cop per pop ratios in the country and be no safer. This is why I have said it's about deployment. You need to get the officers deployed in a downtown police station, not a retail outlet. And you need to get the police working with mental health and addiction experts. They are not the best first point of contact for the vulnerable. Thank you.
Jyoti Gondek.
Well, one of the things I find very interesting is that the Calgary Police Service has told us plainly that we can't enforce our way out of this and they are looking for support. So when it comes to providing them supports, they're seeking help with mental health and addictions and housing. And Ms. Sharp, you have voted against all of the budget requests that would have supported those kind of programs in our core and within our city. You voted against housing initiatives regularly. You have voted against an increase to mental health and addiction support. So the very police officers that you're hoping to hire are begging you to make investments in things that would support them, and you won't do it.
May I answer?
Please.
Thank you. So I think the question was how we were going to support the police officers. And so the business case when they bring forward is to support the actual police officers in dealing with the things they have to deal with. And so you actually, unfortunately, didn't vote for the police in our very first year, and it became of a defunding issue. So what we're doing is we're catching up. And
that is blatantly false.
So,
you can look at the
anyways.
public record. Absolutely false.
Yeah, well, I mean, the conversation here is ultimately we have 20% plus of our officers who are actually on leave. How about we start by actually working on mental health programs and supporting those officers to get back to work? Then we wouldn't actually need to make up numbers like 500 officers.
What does that look like, Jeff?
Well, I think it's working with the chief to understand why people are off. I mean, let's face it, crime has changed, and it's changed dramatically in the last 4 years. The types of responses that Calgary Fire and that Calgary Police are going to, these aren't like anything we've seen before. This is a different world. And so more supports for officers, more supports for frontline people is what's needed. But what we're talking about here is where Sonia has proposed cuts over the last 3 years to get rid of mental health and addiction strategies. Part of that would have supported officers. She supported cuts to the low-income transit pass, which we know is part of that mental health and addiction piece that people need to be able to work so they can live, so they can eat. We don't want them back on the streets. So to me, it's making up numbers of how many officers are needed. I think, quite frankly, you should talk to the chief, not the union.
I actually talked to the chief, and I just want to say one thing. I did not support mental health and addiction strategies. I did. And you're talking and listening to two people that defunded the police in their last term. I'm actually still speaking. And what I will say is that what we're looking for is making sure our city's safe with boots on the ground. When you're speaking mental health and addiction strategy, again, roles and responsibilities of our municipal government, working with the provincial government. So if you want to go for the provincial government, there is an election coming in 2 years, and I think that's where you should channel your energy.
Can't wait for them, and you won't invest.
I'm going to bring Jeremy into the conversation. Your pen has been going, but not your mouth. I say that with respect.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. I want to bring in those with the lived experience. In advance of the debate, I don't know if you're here, Alexandra, but you offered the experience from the front line, what the actual folks on the ground are experiencing. And fights like this between compassion or enforcement, it doesn't work. The truth is that we need both. And my public safety plan calls for, yes, reversing the city cuts that were made to mental health funding, providing greater support for alternative call response models, things like the Alpha House's help team, and also working with the provincial government to launch a 10-year social sector surge to fully fund family and community support services. But the fact is, collectively, with 12 years on council, neither of you have been able to do what's been necessary to support the front line, fund compassion, but also ensure that the support for the police is there so that they can deliver the work and be held accountable for it.
I'm going to move this along.
I would like to
on this
something.
theme, and we'll go to Jyoti Gondek first. There has been a lot of talk. This is a question around scope to a degree. A lot of talk about the root causes of this needing to be addressed. How much of that responsibility falls to City Hall?
There's a very plain thing that we have to address. People are in crisis. Public safety is something that's being threatened. And if we sit and wait for the provincial government to step up, we are going to leave people in positions of jeopardy. So sometimes you have to act even though it's not your lane. The entire problem with staying in your lane is when you have a partner who's ready to bulldoze over you and not pick up their responsibility. We are $437 million short every year in funding from the provincial government that we have to try to make up. And when it comes to mental health and addictions treatment, we have been promised for 4 years to find some sort of a solution, and they've yet to do anything. So I'm not going to stay in my lane while people are dying on the streets, and family members, some of people that are in this audience right now, are suffering. We have to step up when others won't.
Jeff Davison?
I actually want to myth bust something here because this lie that Sonia keeps telling about defunding police is crazy to me. Listen to what the police chief says. When the police chief said to me, Jeff, we need body-worn cameras, I supported that. When the police chief said to me, Jeff, we need support for mental health for our officers, we supported that. When the police chief said, Jeff, we need new helicopters because Calgary has the most widely flown police choppers in the world, I supported that. I actually listened to the chief, not their union telling us what to do. So don't ever spill lies that we defunded anything. Part of the reason officers are 20% of them off on leave right now is because you refused to get behind a program that would have actually supported them with the right response at the right time, and it's something their chief asked us for.
I'd like to add something. There was some defunding of the police done. It's when the province eliminated photo radar. In the 4 years that I worked as police commission chair, we brought up the police budget by $25 million a year. That took 4 years of hard work. In one fell swoop of the pen, the premier eliminated photo radar and $28 million from the police budget. And guess who sent us the bill? Sonia Sharp and Jyoti Gondek. They passed a motion, you paid for that. So that was an actual defunding of the police. And I will also say this, at one of our first debates, Sonia Smith-Sharp said that she would work on closing the Shamir Center, write a letter to the Premier, and ask the Premier to close the Shamir, and then, her words, then she would come up with a plan. That is the most dangerous thing I have ever heard. All use would immediately become street use. It would push everything onto the streets. Our communities would be in serious danger. If the province decides to close the Shamir, we need a serious, well-thought-out plan to treat people for mental health and addictions and interdict in the street emergencies and transit emergencies that we are going to see all over this city.
Thanks very much. We'll go to Sonia
Sure.
Sharp.
So first of all, it's Sonia Sharp, not Sonia Smith Sharp, just to make sure we know that. Sorry, Brian, I know.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's okay. But it's all good. It's all good. Make sure it's no Sonia Smith on the ballot. But what I do want to say is, up here, standing up here, I have lived experience on mental health and addiction, and I know what it's like to lose somebody to addiction. And so when I call on the Schumer to be closed, it's not because I have no compassion. I have tons of compassion. And what it is taking care of everybody, including those that deserve the dignity, that are on the street. So what I'm saying is, let's make it safe for everybody. So if the Premier or the government of Alberta needs 4 sites, we are the biggest landowner in the city. So let's give them the land to build the buildings they need. That is what I meant by closing it. Another thing is, and I have to be honest, the stopgap money that we approved at council came from emergency reserve. No tax went up. So I'll stop there.
It's a provincial issue, but the Schumer matters to a lot of people, matter to a lot of people in this room. We'll give you a word on it. Jeremy.
Well, I'll just say that there's only one taxpayer. There's no such thing as reserves that don't come from the taxpayer. It comes from Calgarians to begin with. My vision is for us to work collaboratively with the provincial and federal government. We need to move on from this idea of jurisdiction and finger pointing. It's a collective responsibility, public safety, mental health, addiction, all of this, and we need to be able to work collaboratively with the provincial government and the federal government to be able to deliver for Calgarians.